Palkia may be one of the most slept on restricteds in Regulation G. Today we are going to be going over how to use this Pokemon, and we have to start off by addressing the elephant in the room. And that is the fact that Palkia simply cannot hit its moves guaranteed. And I think that's one of the main factors in holding it back. Because your stab water moves, right? If I just search a water move, right? Like my stab water moves here are Killing Water, base 50 power, not worth it, right? Hydro Pump, 80 accuracy. Surf, I mean, I guess you could do something cool beside like Ogerpon or Gastrodon and just like send surfs, but that's probably not consistent enough. And the other options like Water Pulse or Whirlpool, and I don't see that being any good, right? So your biggest issue is you are forced to kind of run sets where it's Hydro Pump, Spatial Rend, because the upside of Spatial Rend is too good not to, and then like Earth Power or other coverage move, and then either Trick Room, Protect, depending on how you break it up. But the biggest concern, right, it's basic, it's main stabs, the stabs you want to be clicking, these moves that you want to be clicking 90% of the time with your one restricted are just going to miss, right? It kind of feels like Groudon in a little bit of a ways where it's just never going to hit its move. It would really appreciate having some sort of accuracy boost, accuracy buff, just something beside it to help this thing out. Now, it does indeed get gravity, but that's not worth it, right? But regardless, Palkia has a lot of really good stats, right? Similar to that Dialga, that 150 special attack stat, it's got a pretty good speed stat in the base 100 as well. So you can use this thing in and out of Trick Room if you so choose. You also get to do 100, 100, like 90, 100, 120 is not frail by any means. You can live a lot of things just by like maxing the HP stat. And you're going to see that in the first set there. Once we get over to it, it's basically just max. There's really not much else to say. But I've broken this down for you guys, and we're going to get into the sets very shortly. But real quick, once again, I'm going to be merging Palkia and Origin Form Palkia. There's really no point in making two separate guides. It's the same Pokemon. The only difference this time is that 120 that was an attack stat now goes over to the speed stat. So once again, farther enhancing that, hey, this thing can actually go pretty fast. And I think it might be the better form if you're not looking to go Trick Room. I would definitely go with this version of Palkia. However, we're going to start off with set 1. And set 1, Terra Steel. Guys, I think Terra Steel is by far the best Terra you are going to be able to get onto a Palkia. Terra Steel makes you weak to ground, makes you weak to fire, but you just hit both of ground and fire with your Hydro Pumps, and you're chilling there, right? The biggest concern there is a fighting type, but you can deal with the fighting types elsewhere. I don't think you really care about them. There's other defensive Terras, of course. Fairy's probably pretty decent here. Grass is cool if you're not safety goggles. But I think the first set I'm going to recommend here is Palkia rocking the safety goggles. And you can choose between pressure and telepathy. If you are setting Trick Room, chances are if you want to pair this with like an Ursaluna clicking Earthquake, you can go ahead and do that and run telepathy. But I really think Palkia Amoonguss is so good that I would probably always be putting an Amoonguss beside a Palkia. If I were to ever craft a Palkia team, I would throw an Amoonguss on it. I think it's incredible. And being able to heal yourself up is really strong. So I think having pressure and the ability to click Pollen Puff into yourself is almost a must. So I would run pressure unless you have a really good reason to try an Earthquake beside yourself, right? Or to explode or any of the like. I do think pressure might just be a little bit more consistent in the long run, especially if you are pairing the thing with Amoonguss. That's my personal preference. Safety goggles, just to not care about opposing Amoonguss, so I can kind of just get Trick Room up. Basically, I can just read Rage Powder Trick Room, and I should be good. I know I can't redirect the Amoonguss, but Amoonguss now can no longer put me to sleep. I get Rage Powder Trick Room up, which is pretty consistent outside of if they click Fake Out or anything like that. So, Trick Room, more often than not, going up with this Palkia, which is really strong. And once again, you've got to kind of rely on these moves. Spatial Rend, kind of a necessary evil because the high crit ratio is too good. But like, I mean, in theory, you can go Dragon Pulse if you really wanted an 100% accurate move. But the damage from Spatial Rend, in my opinion, coming off of that base 150 special attack stat, the upside is too high from it. I think you kind of just need to risk it. So you go Spatial Rend, you go Hydro Pump, Earth Power, or any other tech move that your team sees fit. Flamethrower is a cool option. Thunderbolt if you're really scared of those Kyogres, but I think you beat Kyogre with your other moves anyways. Earth Power, like on that Dialga, like on the Giratina, seems to be that best coverage move that I can recommend right now. It hits those big steel restricteds, whether it's the Zacian, whether it's the Zamazenta, which is probably the more common one now. What a world we live in. And then, of course, I opted for Trick Room on this set. Like I said, this set was meant to embrace Trick Room. And you can go ahead and go max. I'm going to be honest. You can go max. There's not much else to say, right? You can just go max and move on with your life. I was looking for some sort of small optimization that I could make on this Palkia spread. And what I came up with was dropping to 236, which was the boost or the bump into special attack stat. And then if I put 20 in defense, I am always living a Wood Hammer from Miracle Seed Rillaboom, even if they're max attack. Obviously, if they tear grass, I'm dying, but at that point, I can tear a steel, right? But basically, if max attack Wood Hammer is not killing me, but once again, guys, that was such a minuscule adjustment. It's a 6.3% to kill me if I just go 4. So like, or it's like a 12% or something like that. But regardless, it was a very minuscule optimization, and you can 1000% just go max here. There's really nothing else to say, but I did want to showcase that you can make small adjustments depending on what team you're running to cater to the certain matchups a little bit better with the max spread. But pretty much similar to the Calyrex, you just need to go max. You don't really need another set here, right? Speed tier is actually interesting, and it really depends on how you're approaching the team, because you don't really get much from being 94, you know? But you also don't really get much if you're leaning into Trick Room. You don't really get much from just being 120, right? You kind of just sit there. Now the question is, what speed stat do you really want to run? And this is where it gets interesting. You can probably get away with min speed, right? 94 is not bad. You're going to be moving in Trick Room pretty quickly, right? And it's not the slowest thing in Trick Room by any means, but at least it's slow, it's bulky, and it's going to be underspeeding all those Raging Bolts into Trick Room, which is probably pretty worth it. But you can also do something a little fancy, right? Now, if you are really willing to soft reset for Palkia IVs, like specific IVs, you can probably go ahead and maybe sit around like a 112, a 113, right? And the concept here would be you can now use the thing inside of Trick Room and outside of Trick Room. And basically, you go Tailwind, and you can outpace the Calyrex Shadow. If you go Trick Room, you're still a relatively slow speed, and you can still capitalize on Trick Room versus a lot of the faster teams. But I think if your Trick Room is your main priority here, you're probably just looking at saying, yeah, I'm okay, I'm going to go quiet. I'm pretty content to go min speed and roll with that, right? But overall, those are things you can kind of play around with as you experiment with the team. If you want to have a Tailwind and a Trick Room mode, if you want to commit to Trick Room with this Pokemon. But basically, the first set, like I said, is just that I'm going to try and set Trick Room up, and I'm going to just do damage back. You know, similar to the Calyrex, just with single target moves that aren't 100% accurate. It just kind of feels a little rough. But, I mean, you can definitely do something. It's a pretty good Pokemon. Water Dragon is absurdly broken. It's an incredible typing. It really should be a good Pokemon, guys. Okay? It just misses its moves, and it's not reliable. That's why it was so good in Dynamax, because you could Dynamax and not miss those moves for 3 turns and capitalize. You don't have that ability anymore. So it's a little bit more of a gambly Pokemon. Probably gets a little bit better when it's not your only restricted as well, because then you're not fully gambling on missing your moves with your only restricted. You get that second restricted that can be a lot more of a consistent piece. Like, once again, Palkia Calyrex Ice is probably still going to be a pretty good core come 2 restricted formats. But right now, you still got to gamble on those moves all the time, and it gets a little rough. But we'll move on to set 2, and I think this horse, if you're looking to slap a Palkia on a team and not build a Trick Room team, I think this is the way you need to go, in my opinion. I would go with this horse. The speed stat and the attack stat switching is amazing for this Pokemon if you're trying to go fast, because you can do so many cool things with that speed stat, because you're so fast now and you actually hit pretty hard, right? And that's exactly what I'm going to recommend, is hitting fast and hard. Now, I have set 2 and set 2.5. Basically, the first one here is going to be the modest variant of the spread, and the second one is actually going to go over there and be the timid variant. just because I really wanted to showcase both, because you can do a lot and there's different speed stats to hit, and I figured I'd showcase it in 2 separate spots. Once again, Earth Power, probably your most consistent thing, but you can always go ahead and click like a Ice Beam, Flamethrower, Aura Sphere, whatever you feel fits your team best. Tons of options there. I mean, you could put this thing beside like a Ninetales and just start clicking Blizzard spam too. That's kind of cool, right? But I don't think you necessarily need to do that. Once again, I'm recommending Steel Terra on all of these. I kind of looked at it a little bit. Steel feels the best to me, but you can definitely play around. Maybe Grass on a fast offensive set could be pretty cool, but I'm going to recommend Steel across the board. It just seems to be the most consistent. You could also technically, in theory, just go Terra Water and commit, but for right now, you're up Protect instead of Trick Room on this piece. If you're running this variant, like the horse version of Palkia, I don't think you ever want Trick Room. You have base 120 speed, and I think that's where you want to capitalize. So here I jumped up to 159. Now, basically how I came up with this speed stat was I was like, okay, well, Adam and Urshifus are hitting 149, right? That's what they hit. I want to outpace that. Cool, so I'll go 150, right? Zamazentas can sometimes chill within this area, right? So let's go up to around here, right? Zamazentas could technically be faster, but 156 is the max speed for Timid Kyogre. So why don't we just outpace that and actually capitalize on our speed? So we'll go 157. But a lot of people might be capitalizing on that 157 speed stat. So we'll go 158. Now, I've seen a few Zamazentas over the years hit that 158 stat. And by over the years, I mean over quite literally the last month. But like, I've seen a few hit 158. So why not creep that once again and just be faster than that there, right? And that's kind of how I approach that. The speed stat, guys, you can kind of do whatever with this modest one and then dump the rest into bulk. I didn't really calc out any sort of calcs for this one. I said you're probably just going to try and outpace something. You're going to go crazy with your attack stat here. 236 modest is still going to be doing disgusting damage. Hydro Pump hits pretty hard. Spatial Rend is going to hit pretty hard. And then I just kind of dumped it into HP and some of the defenses here. Nothing really too crazy on this one. I went a little bit more in-depth with some calcs on the second one here, just because with Timid, I didn't necessarily need to commit as much, and there's a few things I really wanted to make sure I was surviving. So we'll jump over to that, but this is basically hit hard, hit fast with the horse. There's not too much to say on this one. This one, I wanted to showcase something like an Icy Wind, because if you are going to be fast as I made it, right, it feels pretty good, right? You make it as fast as you can go, and then you go Icy Wind and you slow some things down. And you know what? I will take that. I will appreciate that. And sometimes that's a good move. The problem with this is now every single one of my moves can miss. I do not have any sort of consistent move to take out something at 3 or 4 HP. I do not have a move to do that. And that is incredibly scary. However, if you're really willing to roll the dice, Icy Wind is a pretty cool tech if you're looking for some speed control, right? But no defensive calcs here. Set 3 has the defensive calcs, but basically, I went max pretty much. I sent it, and I was going to sit here and I was going to be like, oh, I'll outpace Tornadus. But why not just outpace Whimsicott at 184? So you hit 185, and there's nothing between 185 and max speed at 189. There is no Pokemon in that stat. If I'm wrong, you used to have Cinderace at 188. That was the number. But I don't see a Cinderace ever popping up in this format right now. So right now, I think outpacing Whimsicott with that speed creep is probably a perfectly fine spot to hit. And then you just, a little bit of bulk with whatever you have left. You can probably dump it all into HP. It's probably much more consistent, but I don't like looking at EV spreads that only have 3. So I was just going to do this, but you can definitely dump it into HP. It's probably a little bit more consistent across the board, right? And once again, just hit hard, hit fast. Icy Wind is cool for speed control if you're looking for it. And once again, maybe on a set like this, you actually do go Terra Water or Terra Dragon to actually just commit to doing the damage, because you are saying you're losing a lot by not being modest, right? You just barely missed the knockout on Urshifu with your Spatial Rends. I mean, it's a 90% roll, but like, you barely missed that knockout. So maybe going Terra Dragon and sending Spatial Rends gives you that added boost back, and you actually put on a little bit more pressure, right? Dragon is on its own is a pretty good typing, and it's still offensive as well, so you could gamble on that. I wouldn't gamble Terra Water Hydro Pump, because if you Terra Water Hydro Pump, 80% is not fun. Okay, guys, I figured it out. No, I figured it out, okay? You gamble Terra Water Terra Blast, right? Because then you're 100% accurate. I don't think this is good, because you're basically saying you have to tear this piece every single time, which, I mean, I guess you could. It's a kind of a funny cook. I don't think you necessarily need to commit to it, but it's kind of a funny cook. I still think steel or grass are a lot more consistent. And yeah, you just gamble the hydro pump. That's the nature of Palkia. But this is kind of funny, right? If you're committed to tearing this Palkia, and you're tearing Palkia a lot more often than you'd think, maybe Terra Blast, Terra Water is funny. Get you that 100% water move. And it probably hits pretty hard. Moving on, set 3 right now. I never really finished the moveset here. We get it at this point, guys. The moveset is not changing, okay? The moveset is going to be the same. It's going to be that big water move, the dragon move, most certainly Spatial Rend, tech move, and then Protector Trick Room. In this one, it's going to be the Life Orb variant. I'm not going to optimize on Trick Room. I'm going to run Protect. And basically, have a little bit more bulk here. I went 108 because that's the optimal Life Orb HP number for Chip. And then I went 108 and I said, okay, 52 is what would allow me to guarantee that 3-shot from Calyrex Astral Barrage. Now, it doesn't really matter since they're going to Astral Barrage. I'm going to get chipped by Life Orb. I'm going to die anyways. But in a small, minuscule world where I switch Palkia in to eat an Astral, then I take another Astral, I live on 2 or 3 guaranteed, and then I at least get 1 attack off in that world. Whereas the other way, I potentially don't get an attack off at all if I have to do that. It was a minor adjustment, but it was a thing. It was definitely something I wanted to calc for here. So I jumped it up to 60. And I'll tell you why in a minute. It's a very dumb reasoning, but you can definitely just leave it at 52 and maybe do that, right? But overall, 236, once again, hitting that special attack bump. Speed I sat at 129. You can play around with this speed. This is entirely up to you where you want to put the speed. Once again, the defense numbers was also a slider. I didn't really do any calcs as to what was going on there. Basically 36 and 60 were pretty numbers in my mind, so I went with 36, 60. But you can easily go with the calc, the number that hits the calc, which is 52. Maybe find something here, and you can just, you know, speed this up a little bit if you wanted to, right? If it fits your team a little better, you can easily speed that up. I went with 68 because it basically outpaces timid Pelipper. Not that any of the Pelippers are actually timid, but once again, like I said, and I believe it was one of the older videos, and if you, for that one timid Pelipper you play and you outpace, you're welcome. I know I said it before, but I'll say it again, guys. Like, it doesn't really make sense. I didn't know what to do with the speed tier, right? Once again, 125 outpaces those max speed Serenas. 124 outpaces the max speed Insins, right? Those are the numbers, you know? This is kind of where you want to sit, right? I went 129 and then just kind of slid the numbers around to something that looked a little bit more pretty and still got the calcs I wanted. But overall, set 3, once again, just kind of abusing the more offensive variant of a Life Orb Palkia instead of just, you know, setting Trick Room with it. I wanted to showcase a bulkier regular Palkia and a more offensive regular Palkia on the more offensive side of things and the faster side of things as well. Because 100 base speed is still pretty strong, right? I mean, in theory, you don't need bulk at all, right? In theory, you can just do this, right? And you can kind of sit at 150 and just outpace those Adamant Urshifus, and you're probably set, right? And, you know, there's a lot of things you can do with this. Like I said, I wanted to showcase a few speed stats here, but other than that, there was some calcs in there that were cool, I guess. But overall, guys, I'm gonna stop rambling about Palkia. This Pokemon could be so good if it could just hit its moves. Like, it really could be good. But anyways, guys, that's going to do it for the Palkia guide. If you guys are enjoying these types of videos, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. It really does help with the channel. And of course, I really do appreciate it. But of course, I'm going to get it out of here. Thank you all so much for checking out the video, and I will catch you all in a future video.